In Normandy, U.S. soldiers feared one German weapon even more than Tiger tanks, a gun built to close the skies, but repurposed to erase men from hedgerows. The Flak-Vierling, nicknamed the sewing machine, spat nearly 1,000 shells a minute, shredding concealment and nerves alike. But how did an anti-aircraft design become infantry's worst nightmare? The answer begins with a simple math problem and rewrites the rules of battle. Rheinmetall's engineers faced a stubborn problem in the late 1930s. Their 2-centimeter Flak 38 fired fast, 220 rounds per minute from a single barrel, but each gun relied on a 20-round box magazine. In real combat, that meant a loader was always racing the clock. 20 shots emptied in just a few seconds. By the time a fresh magazine snapped in, precious moments were lost, and the sky, or the battlefield, was no safer. Instead of inventing a whole new feed system, the solution was pure arithmetic. Multiply, don't redesign. 4 Flak 38s mounted side by side on a single rotating platform turned the magazine limit into a strength. With all barrels blazing, the quad mount could unleash a theoretical maximum of about 1,400 rounds per minute. In practice, with loaders juggling magazines and barrels heating up, crews averaged closer to 800 rounds per minute. That is more than 13 shells every second, a staccato rhythm that overwhelmed both air and ground targets. The math behind the Flak-Vierling's firepower was simple, but the effect was anything but. Each gun still needed its own loader, and the crew worked in a tight mechanical dance, one magazine after another, keeping the barrels fed. The design did not chase complexity, it chased volume. 4 barrels firing together created a wall of metal, and for those on the receiving end, the difference between 1 gun and 4 was the difference between cover and no cover at all. A Flak-Vierling crew worked as a single, living machine. At the heart of the system sat the gunner, feet planted on 2 broad pedals. Each pedal controlled a pair of barrels set across from each other, left and right, front and rear. Press one pedal, and 2 cannons roared in unison. Release, and the other pair stood ready. This alternating rhythm wasn't just for show, it was a way to keep the barrels cooler, to stagger the bursts, and to buy precious seconds for the loaders. Loaders were more than helpers, they were the tempo. Every gun devoured a 20-round magazine in about 3 seconds. That meant the loaders had to be in constant motion, snap out the empty, slam in the next, latch it tight, and signal ready. The drill was relentless. Muscle memory took over, hands moving faster than thought, each loader with a stack of magazines within arm's reach. If one stumbled, the whole system slowed. If they kept pace, the gun could sustain a practical rate of nearly 800 rounds per minute, 13 shells a second, filling the air with a dense, unbroken stream. The gun's elevation controls were precise. With hand wheels, the assistant gunner could sweep the barrels from the horizon to nearly vertical, tracking aircraft up to 4,000 yards high, or pivot down to sweep a tree line. The Flak-Vierling didn't demand pinpoint aim. Its job was to fill a slice of sky with metal, forcing anything in its path, plane or person, to run a gauntlet of fire. The real innovation wasn't in the steel, but in the way men and machine moved together, turning simple math into a lethal rhythm. By the second year of the war, German anti-aircraft crews were already lowering their barrels. Documents from 1941 and 1942 describe the Flak-Vierling 38 being turned on ground targets wherever the front demanded it. The logic was straightforward. If a weapon could fill the sky with shrapnel, it could erase anything behind a wall or a bush just as easily. Field reports from the Eastern Front and North Africa mention quad 20mm fire shredding advancing infantry and light vehicles, especially when machine guns could not cut through cover. The weapon's reputation for ground fire was not an accident. It was a recognized tool in the arsenal. Captured examples tell the same story. A Flak 38 found near El Alamein and now preserved with Africa Corps markings shows battle wear from both air and ground action. Its gun shield is scratched with names and field numbers, a silent testimony to months of dual-purpose service. Manuals and technical bulletins from the period began to mention not just aircraft silhouettes, but also diagrams of infantry positions and soft-skinned vehicles. By 1942, German doctrine did not treat ground fire as a last resort. It was a practical option, especially as Allied air attacks ebbed and ground assaults surged. The Flak-Vierling's volume of fire, designed for fleeting aircraft, simply found new targets. This adaptation would echo across every front, long before the hedgerows of Normandy made it infamous. Normandy's bocage was a battlefield like no other. Dense hedgerows, sunken lanes, and fields boxed in by tangled green walls turned every movement into a gamble. For American infantry, the world shrank to narrow sight lines and sudden, violent encounters. A hedge might be 5 feet thick, packed with earth and roots, offering the illusion of safety until the first burst of 20mm shells tore through it. There was no warning, just the sudden eruption of leaves, splinters, and fragments. One U.S. veteran described it as walking into a meat grinder you could not see. The sound of the Flak-Vierling's 4 barrels firing together created a relentless mechanical buzz. It became a signal to freeze, duck, or pray. In after-action reports from July 1944, infantry units recalled entire squads pinned or shredded in seconds when a quad 20mm mount opened fire from behind a screen of foliage. Another survivor remembered that the bushes exploded and men disappeared. The hedgerows that once promised cover became traps. German gunners aimed not at shapes, but at gaps, anywhere a helmet or rifle might poke through. A single burst from the Flak-Vierling could strip branches, punch through wood, and turn brick to dust. In that kind of terrain, volume of fire was everything. It was not about accuracy, it was about making sure nothing survived on the other side of the green wall. For U.S. troops, the fear was not just of being seen, it was of being erased before they ever saw the enemy. Mounting the Flak-Vierling 38 on a Panzer IV chassis created the Wirbelwind, a machine built for movement as much as firepower. Ostbauwerke converted somewhere between 87 and 105 of these vehicles in 1944 and 1945, each fitted with a distinctive 9-sided open-top turret that crews nicknamed Keksdoos, meaning biscuit tin. The open design was not just a shortcut, it gave the crew a full field of view and helped vent the thick smoke and fumes produced by 4 cannons firing in close quarters. With about 3,200 rounds of 20mm ammunition stored inside, the Wirbelwind could keep up a relentless pace, shifting position across broken ground or down narrow lanes where towed guns could not follow. Tracks turned the Flak-Vierling from a static shield into a predator able to appear suddenly, unleash a storm, and vanish before counterfire could pin it down. There was a sound that traveled ahead of the shells, a harsh mechanical stutter that cut through the fields and lanes. U.S. infantry called it the sewing machine, not out of humor, but because the rhythm was unmistakable and terrifying. Machine guns could pin a man down along a narrow path, but the Flak-Vierling's voice filled the air, saturating entire hedgerows and crossroads with lethal bursts. There was no warning, just the sudden buzz and a wall of fragmentation that seemed to erase everything in its path. Survivors remembered the feeling, not just being targeted, but being hunted by a weapon that did not care where you hid. In the bocage, the sewing machine punished spaces, not just lines. It was the sound of nowhere being safe. Today, the line between intended purpose and battlefield reality blurs faster than ever. Technology adapts in combat, not in theory. As new weapons emerge, their true legacy is shaped less by design than by desperation. The lesson: what terrifies isn't always what engineers predict. Thanks for watching.